everybody, Big Jano here. In today's video, we're going to go behind the scenes and take an exclusive look at the Gingerbread City display, holiday project, and light show. This was a project that was probably the most detailed project of mine to date, and in today's video, we're going to take a look at all the different aspects that went into this project, from the initial design all the way into the final light show programming. So stick around, let's talk about how awesome this project was, and I'm going to give you guys the exclusive inside look at some things you might have not known about this. So let's roll the intro for the first time in 2026. For this year's display really didn't come as organically as one might anticipate. There wasn't a ton of time for development for this project compared to years past. Like last year, we ended up coming off of a sickness that I had for like a week and coming back from 3D Printopia. It was already mid-October and I was kind of scrambling to put the pieces together and figure out what this year's theme was going to be. I knew I wanted it to be a bigger and better display. I knew that I wanted to incorporate more LEDs, but I didn't have a theme to really build off of. So I did what any insane person would do, and I actually started designing first and then kind of working a theme in my head based on around what I was designing, which is insane to think that's the way I was thinking about this. So I ultimately just started throwing some stuff together in Fusion 360 and just kind of getting the layout and the groundwork going. I figured at least try to get the approximate size of this display, but I really didn't have a plan. I kind of just improvised a lot of the initial groundwork. I started throwing some buildings together into the model, just throwing some random shapes and putting certain things laid out in the model. And as I kept doing that, something was just kind of going in my head. The gears were starting to kind of mesh, where I was more thinking of a cityscape. Once I kind of had that idea, I was immediately in love with that idea. I thought it was a great tie-in to last year's display with the Gingerbread Factory, but it also gave me a chance to potentially build off of last year's display and last year's story as well. Once I started getting the theming more clearly in my head, I then just did a ton of research on different types of cities. Cities are a very unique ecosystem. You have the big and tall buildings, you have the bright shiny lights, you also have a lot of history in many different cities. So I did so much research, going on Google, looking up different pictures, trying to determine what aesthetics I really wanted to reach with this Gingerbread City. That, I think, took more time for me than to determine the actual theme of this entire project. There were multiple inspirations taken into this display this year. New York City was a big one for me, especially a lot of searching I did for cityscapes and just trying to get those visual aesthetics. You have the fountain that has that gothic Central Park vibe to it. That's the aesthetic going for a little bit there. You have the skyscraper building kind of giving off, Empire State Building, Chrysler Building, inspirations there. You have Main Street going up and down. And I really wanted to have that mix of new and big and bold, but also have that nostalgic and historical look to the cityscape as well. So that's why you kind of see a mix of some new age skyscrapers and new age buildings, and then you also have some historical looking buildings like the hardware store, the cafe, those types of buildings. I really wanted to kind of pay homage to the smaller towns I grew up in as well. You also have some inspirations from other cities that I've been to. The train station was actually very heavily inspired by Union Station that's over in Denver, Colorado. I really love the front facade of the train station. I really wanted to find a way to incorporate those arches, that really historical aesthetic to the train station as well. Kind of one of those older buildings that's in the cityscape, but that was very heavily influenced, and you can kind of see it from the front there a little bit. I wanted to have that drive-through city type atmosphere. It was a big city, but not too big, where you could still kind of get around quite easily, which is why I kind of added the built-in roads that you see in the display. Has that mix of large city but also small town charm kind of mixed together. At the same time, I really wanted to add a lot of those big city Easter eggs, things that most people know big cities for. The giant billboard that sits on top of the building, the Gingerbread City billboard. We also have a built-in ad on the side of one of the buildings as well, just to kind of give it that bigger city feel. You'll see those ads popped up all over the city on various buildings. The decorated sides of some of those smaller historical buildings kind of have that take on those big, large artistic murals that artists paint on sides of buildings. Kind of an ode to that. I think those things just tie everything together really well. Plus, we did have the ode to last year's display with the frosted gingerbread on the side of Jano's hardware store. I pride myself so much this year on this display, not only for the size of the entire display, but the amount of detail that went into this project as well. There's so many more details added to this model that I don't typically focus on when designing. I added a lot of aesthetic touches to a lot of these models to really make this a worthy display of triumphing last year's. Because of that, I think it took us way more time to design this thing than it should have. I think we ended up going into almost Thanksgiving with finishing the display design, but I was very happy that I did end up giving that extra time into the display, because I don't think it would have been served justice if I didn't put the time and attention into some of these details into these models. I believe there was, I think, a total of 51 or 52 total parts for this entire display this year, which got me scared initially, thinking, how are we going to print all these parts in a timely manner? But also, is anyone else going to want to print 52 parts for this display? Unfortunately, when I say keep doing it big, it's a double-edged sword, because I like to try to continue to build bigger and better things. So this display being 2.5 times larger than last year's display, it was going to take a lot of printing time. It was going to take a lot of manpower to get this done in a timely manner, because we didn't really have a ton of time. We spent too long on the design, and we were kind of playing catch up trying to print everything. Having the Prusa XL 2-tool upgrade kit was a game changer. That significantly decreased our print times and also gave us the ability to print these parts in multi-colors this year. Instead of me having to hand paint or hand decorate many of the parts like last year's display and the gingerbread displays we've done in the past, this year we were able to incorporate multi-colors, or in this case 2 colors, in the prints themselves while they were printing. So that made my job trying to print all these parts a little bit easier. The storyline for this year's light show continues from last year's display and light show. You have the gingerbread workers coming off of last year's success. This year they decided to take their crew to the big city to get inspired and stock up on supplies. Little did they know they get into some shenanigans that happen. There's actually the introduction of some conflict this year. You have the gingerbread workers, the good guys, battling the evil executives from the fruitcake company, fighting it out. The fruitcake guys are up to no good. They're trying to eliminate all of the holiday spirit in Gingerbread City, and at the end of the day, the gingerbread crew and their passion and their joy for the season triumph over any evil and wrongdoing. It's a little cliche, but what holiday display isn't a little cheesy to a degree? The theme of the story for the Gingerbread Cityscape actually didn't come to mind initially. It actually became more apparent once the design was in progress or parts of the design were already finished. So it was a little different for me to have to kind of go backwards and think of the storyline to go with our display and for the light show this year. This year's story really had a lot more attached to it than last year's. Last year's story didn't have a lot of meat behind it. This year I really wanted to give it a lot more thought. I really wanted to add a lot more substance to it this year, and so that's why it kind of took as long as it did to get the storyline figured out. Like many of my projects, LEDs are a core accompaniment to many of my 3D designs. I always found that LEDs just brighten everything up and give it an additional layer of visualization. I knew from the get-go with this much larger display than last year's that we were going to incorporate many more LEDs than last year's display. This year's display is definitely a step up from last year's. Last year I think we had 160 LED lights total, or LED pixels. This year we were at almost 800 pixels. We ended up incorporating way more than we did last year, which also kind of gave us a couple additional challenges along the way, but we also did incorporate a couple different strands of LEDs this year. We have the 2.7 millimeter LED strips, which are much thinner LEDs. They require a little bit less power per pixel, which gave us the opportunity to be able to run more of these at one time without having to compromise our power supply and any safety issues. I actually ended up buying 3 or 4 different types of addressable LED strands for this project to test out how these would look in certain situations. That was one of the initial challenges of trying to determine where these LEDs could get integrated into the display, how we're going to do it, and it honestly kind of seemed like it was almost an afterthought at one point. I became very indecisive on how I wanted to project these LEDs. For example, we have the 2.7 millimeter LEDs on the buildings. They're kind of wrapped around like string lights. The scale, I believe, for those worked out perfectly with the size of our models. But then we had the situation with the ground lighting, which gave us a challenge of trying to figure out what type of lighting we wanted to use. Strip lighting is great because it can incorporate a large amount of area. However, the way to adhere those lights on a planar surface or a flat surface doesn't make it ideal for multi-directional light coverage. I played around with a few different LED strips and strings and ultimately came down to going with these encapsulated string lights. They were nicely spaced apart that I could kind of scatter these across the floor of the display. They gave off a really nice finish when they were illuminated. Plus, they're super flexible. I can actually take them apart. They're not actually hard glued to the base pieces, so I'm able to take those apart, and it makes it a little bit easier as well to transport all these components when I travel to an event with this display. I ended up incorporating an additional output of LEDs this year as well. We are actually using the same controller that we used on the first display last year with the Gingerbread Factory. That controller, that microcontroller, has 4 separate outputs for 4 separate LED strands. Last year we only used 3 out of 4 of those strands or outputs. This year we ended up using and utilizing all 4 outputs. I actually ended up not buying the correct lengths of the strips, and so there were certain items of the display that wanted to get illuminated. The holiday tree that's in the left corner unfortunately couldn't get LEDs roped around the coils that were built into the model. That was something that I really wanted to do, but I ran out of lights. Not even exaggerating, I literally bought the wrong strand and didn't have enough to cover both the train station and the tree. So in order to preserve as much of the display as I could that could get illuminated, unfortunately the tree had to stay unlit this year. So that was my one blunder, I think, that really I don't know if I can forgive myself yet for. It also made it very interesting when it came down to illuminating the three little business buildings on the right-hand side of the display. Because the roof lines on all three buildings are at different heights, there wasn't an easy way to translate the string of LEDs from one building to the next without having to bend and do some pretzeling of the strip, but also trying to be careful and not damaging any of the electrical connections in the strip, or else that strip would end up, not working the way we want it to, or having an issue where it couldn't receive data signal. So it took a little bit of maneuvering around and some double-sided tape to stick some of those lights to some of those buildings in the shape and the orientation that it needed to be. So as long as you don't look at it from the backside, it looks pretty well done. But knowing this video, this is a all breaks loose video. So we're gonna celebrate the imperfections here. I think it all worked out in the end, though. This display and this light show this year, out of all the different aspects that go into it, I think the most exciting thing for me was to pick out all of the audio and the music tracks for this year's show. I really think that the music plays one of the biggest roles in trying to convey the story that you want to tell and showcase the emotions that the story tells with it. I would say I took quite a bit of time to figure out the music and figure out the perfect audio tracks for this light show. I really wanted to pick the right music, wanted to make the viewer understand what was going on in the story, but also have that wow factor that some of the music can provide. There was a lot of upbeat music, there was a lot of theatrical music. The Big City Jazz Ensemble was one of my favorite tracks that I picked. It really tied into the city itself, moment in the story when the factory crew are getting into the big city for the first time. It was just a very upbeat song, and it's right before all the conflict happens, so people are feeling good. They're not worried too much about anything else going on yet. It was one of my favorite tracks to put into the show this year for sure. A few of my favorite audio tracks from the show this year were in really key aspects or key moments of the show itself. And two moments come to mind immediately for me where the city starts kind of shifting from everything's great, everything's grand, everyone's spirits are up to, oh no, what's this presence, this negative presence filling the air and kind of draining the life out of everybody in the holiday season. That song for me was one that I just found that fit really perfectly, and I was able to convey the light show with that song very, very well, transitioning the lights from rainbow and bright colors, from white to darker red to yellow. A lot of shifting from white to red was used to kind of symbolize that transition from things are great to not great. Just a really great way to kind of shift the story into its conflict stage. I think that really set the tone for that. You also have the big battle scene. The audio track for the big battle scene between the Gingerbread Factory crew and the evil executives from Fruitcake Incorporated was another track that I really enjoyed. I think that's probably my favorite song out of all of the music that I had sourced for this light show this year. That song just had a lot of real theatrical, kind of superhero-y vibes to it. It had like that shift in tones. It was kind of like that fight between good and evil. And I believe just the song itself did the light show justice, was able to create so many really cool effects for the lights themselves. A lot of back and forth shifting from red and white, red representing the not so good, white representing the light, the good side, those clashing together a lot in that sequence. But the song really drove that home. What was really unique to this year's light show as well, and the audio that was being used for it, was that we actually had a community member that's been a part of our channel and been a part of our community for quite a bit of time. They actually messaged me and said, hey, I filmed some white noise audio from me walking down the street from work. Here you go, you could use this for your show. And I took a listen to it. It was the perfect grouping of just inner city white noise. You had cars honking at each other. You actually had somebody playing, I believe, a saxophone on the side of the street. You heard people chattering, and we were actually able to incorporate that into the show right before the entrance into the big city. It actually gets incorporated right after we added some audio of a train arriving into the train station. So it was a really great tie-in to the big jazz ensemble song in the show. While I think our proportion of more festive music to theatrical music was not really split evenly, there was a lot more theatrical music that went into this year's light show. I really do think it served a really good purpose, and I think it just really tied in well with the storyline. One of the things I'm most proud of with this show is the audio itself. We had a lot of positive feedback about the music this year, so that makes me feel really good that that little bit of a risk really paid off. With both our light shows we've done in the last couple years, I really wanted to emphasize a strong start to the show as well as a really big finish to the light show. And for that, we had to choose a song for the finale that I thought was just very triumphant, just got everybody in the best mood possible. It actually was kind of funny. We found our finale song, and then a couple weeks later go by, and I was just digging around through Epidemic Sound, where we found a lot of our music from. I actually found the finale song that we actually used, the very, very last song, kind of like the encore song where the narrator says his goodbyes. I listened to that song for the first time when I found it, and it immediately clicked that this needs to be the finale song. And then we actually moved the old finale song into the show as the second to last song. It ended up being another 4 or 5 minutes longer of a light show than it wanted to be, but only because we ended up finding really great music in my mind that I felt like I couldn't live without putting that in here.
All right, let's get this done. I wish my voice was this deep. That would be cool.
Probably my favorite aspect of this entire project was writing the script and working on the voiceover work for all the narration for the light show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Big Jano's live stream presentation of the Gingerbread City Holiday Light Show display. With a trip like this into the big city, who knows what's in store? But don't worry, in Gingerbread City, nothing bad ever happens here.
With the help of a voice modulator software and with my script in hand, I was able to knock out all of the voiceover work for the narrator of not only this year's light show, but last year's light show as well. I was the heavenly voice of our narrator friend.
Like taxes and business meetings, something or someone must be behind all this.
Really try my best to do the narrator emotions with justice.
Uh-oh. 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 I've recorded this take like 10 times already. Gotta get it right. Yay.
I think I had the most fun doing that out of everything.
The Gingerbread crew need to do something to fix this mess. Oh, I misread the line. Oops. Oh man, I'm never gonna get this done. I'm procrastinating way too much right now. They did it!
I don't think that I'm going to be getting any voiceover acting jobs anytime soon. But I had fun doing it though.
Happy holidays, and like my friend Big Jano says, keep doing it big. All right, voiceover work done. One more step of this project complete. I cannot wait for you guys to see the final product. This is going to be cool. I think this is going to top last year's for sure.
Like any great project, this certainly had its challenges along the way. There were multiple challenges in different areas that I actually had to address kind of on the spot. There wasn't anything that was a lingering issue, more things that just kind of popped up when we were working on different aspects of the project. That isn't too surprising, but it still keeps you on your toes. On top of the short project timeline as it was, and some of the LED strip length issues that we talked about previously, one of the things that we had to pivot on, or I had to pivot on, was having to get a larger scale power supply to accommodate all of our LEDs. Initially, when we did all the calculations for the pixels, I had initially assumed that we could use our old 200 watt 5 volt power supply that we used on last year's display. We were successful to use it. However, we had noticed that with the lengths of strips that we were using, especially on skyscraper building, that was all one strip of LEDs. The majority of our 800 pixels, we noticed that when all the lights were illuminated, we would see some dimming. We kind of knew that we were seeing some voltage issues there. While we didn't intend on running these at full brightness at any point, thinking ahead and just trying to be proactive and not damage the controller or damage the power supply or cause any other safety issues, we ended up having to purchase a 300 watt 5 volt power supply, which did significantly help some of the voltage drop we were seeing in the lights. That kind of came down to the wire when we got that in, as we did not have a ton of time to get it installed and work on the light show. We actually had to work on the light show with the old power supply and test all the lights, and then halfway through the light show programming, we ended up swapping out the power supply and moving as scheduled. It was certainly a task, and thankfully Amazon got it to us in a few days, but something that wasn't anticipated until we were able to wire all the lights up. Another challenge that I ran into when, especially at the time we were getting Xlights set up and trying to get the light show started, one of the things that I didn't realize with using the same controller as last year's show was that you had to take out all of the inputs from last year's show in Xlights and make sure you add the new ones correctly. I had some issues after I got everything set up, thinking that I was good to go. I just had to re-plug everything back in, rewire the controller, classify the length of the strips, and that would be done. It wasn't as easy as that. Once I started to run the show effects, I was having certain lights light up, certain things not working. It took me a while to realize that it was still referencing things from the Gingerbread factory, which was not even a part of this display this year. Once I was able to clear all that up and make sure Xlights is running only the things I wanted to run, we were smooth sailing again. But something that almost took out a day, almost 2 days of production time, if you could believe that. I would say if any other issues arose throughout this project that were of significance, I would have to probably refer to that printer behind me back there. One of the things early on when printing all of the parts was that we were still also trying to get accustomed to the 2-tool upgrade that we had just put on the Prusa XL. So we were still trying to understand how everything works in the slicer, how the machine operates, how we need to print these parts effectively. Meanwhile, our timeline for printing everything was a week tops. It was nonstop printing for a week straight on that printer, and there were a couple times where some material wouldn't stick to each other on the prime tower and the tool wouldn't be in the right location. We did have one layer shift of a massive print. I think those on the skyscraper we had to kill after a day because we had like a power blip. Remember, we had 50 plus parts to print, and I would say 80% of them were multicolored prints. So we were keeping our fingers crossed for our printer. Thankfully, we only had a minimal amount of printer issues or print issues where we were able to kind of keep things mostly on track time frame wise. That 1-2 day print that we had to restart was definitely brutal, I will say. I don't think we could have conveyed this any better with a single color print and then me painting or decorating after the fact. It definitely had its advantages once the trial and error phase of setting up the prints was over. at the end of the day, most people aren't physically going to be able to see this display in person unless they come to an event that I'm at. But all the work that went into this, the lighting, the design work, the audio, the voiceover, the Xlights programming, all was done with the intent to create this experience. Last year, we did this as kind of a stepping stone from just building a 3D printed gingerbread house, but the expectation from last year's show just grew enough to where I needed to bring my A game. Despite some of the challenges and having a shorter time frame to do 2.5 times the work as last year's display, I certainly loved the end result. Showing this to my friends and the 3D printing community is what drove me to push through the long nights, the many hours of printing, the days of show programming, just to get that end result and to make that experience for all of you the best that it could have been. And I am super proud of myself, how I was able to continue to push through and make things the best I could have. Looking back, it gives me a great sense of accomplishment, knowing that I was able to pull this off. It is certainly an effort much worth enduring, for sure. Would I go back and change a few things? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, as long as the community and the people that come by and watch my streams and watch my videos enjoys the work that I'm doing, that's what makes me feel the best at the end of the day. While I don't know what 2026 will have in store for the expansion of this project, I don't know what's next for this project. I can safely say that we're going to have to plan ahead of time next year if we want to continue to grow this project into what it's been. I don't know if the community will let me not continue to grow this at this point. It's become, to some, it's a tradition. They've told me to watch this every year, and you know, it's big shoes to continuously fill year after year. This is one of those projects that's one of the most exciting for me every year, because it challenges me to push the boundaries of myself as an engineer and designer to see what we can come up with. You'd be surprised what the results are when you push forth into the unknown like that. Who knows where the story continues from here with this project, whether we expand on this display or we create an entirely new experience. I'm excited to see what 2026 can do. You just gotta stay tuned for next year to see what happens. Well, there you have it. There was our insider look at the Gingerbread City holiday display and light show. This was a very intensive project, but it turned out fantastic, and I'm really glad I was able to share some really cool information with you guys, some cool behind-the-scenes looks of some of the aspects of this project and what went into it. And I hope to share more of this type of project stuff into 2026 and maybe into next year's project as well. We'll see what happens in 2026 with next year's holiday project. If you guys enjoyed the video, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. You'll be the first to know when new content arrives here on the YouTube channel here in 2026, so you won't miss out. Go subscribe if you can, please, and thank you. And leave me a comment down below if there's additional questions you may have on the Gingerbread City holiday display or the light show. I'd love to answer them. Well, that's going to wrap up today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. I greatly appreciate every single one of you, and I hope to see you all real soon. Take care, and until next time, keep doing it big.